Right, we have a panelist this morning, and I just want to introduce them to you today before we continue with other stories as well. We have Professor Anyang Nyong'o, who is the governor of Kisumu, with us this morning. Also, we have Senator Kembi Gitura, Senator Kembi Gitura is a former senator of Murang'a and is an advocate of the High Court as well. We have also with us Dr. James Nyikal, who is a member of parliament from Seme, and we do have with us also Senator Samuel Poghisio, who is the senator of West Pokot. We are eagerly waiting to be joined by Jeremiah Kioni momentarily, who is a member of parliament from Daragwa. Right, let's just hear from our panelists this morning. Listening to that particular by Ruto, and it seems Professor Anyang Nyong'o, when you're here is when now we normally have issues or the debate about the parliamentary system and the presidential system as well. Your comment today, and good to see you.
Well, thank you very much.
Morning.
I think the deputy president panicking for no reason. I think what we need to do is really discuss the options we have before us, kind of in a sober manner. We have seen the presidential system work since independence, and it has not worked really. Most of our problems in this nation has been as a result of presidential system, which has constantly veered towards authoritarianism. And this is not just in Kenya, this is in other countries as well. You remember in Tanzania, just before independence, the then Prime Minister, Julius Nyerere, resigned his seat and went to the countryside to make TANU popular with the people.
Yes.
Because his idea was that if you just leave government to so-called leaders without the people getting involved, there would be a tendency towards tyranny. So he wanted TANU to be very popular at the grassroots so that TANU could be able to control the leaders. In some ways he succeeded. Tanzania is the only country in Africa where political parties at independence became so popular and so strong that it could afford internal democracy easily. So every 5 years there could be changes in leadership without much ripple in the politics of Tanzania. But it was Nyerere too who found out after some time that the one-party system was not working that well. And he then left the presidency and conceded that there should be multi-party system. And I remember in one of his comments, really, he kind of quipped to say the old Westminster type of democracy that he used to liken to football democracy is actually the most preferred system of government where democracy is concerned. And I'm convinced beyond any reasonable doubt that a parliamentary system of government is much better. If you look at countries with parliamentary systems, Malaysia, India, Singapore, Canada, New Zealand, and so on, they've been in the third world, but they've made much more appreciable development economically and stability politically. So I would think that rather than look at the parliamentary system in terms of positions for individuals, we should look at parliamentary system in terms of systems that will help us achieve three things in our lifetime: achieve national unity, achieve development, and sustain democracy. These three things are very important. We are looking for a national, democratic, and developmental state. If we don't have national unity, democracy, and development, we are going nowhere. And I think, as you can see today, we are bedeviled by not having development because of decisions that are made within a presidential system that create a lot of economic problems for the nation.
Right, let's hear from also Kembi Gitura on this presidential system, and of course what we can see on the front page of East African as well. I'll show you also viewers momentarily what they are suggesting a regional integration with one constitution. I don't know if they're mooting idea of one president for the region, but you can actually take a look at the East African as well. But you can comment on what also Professor Anyang Nyong'o is saying.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you for inviting me to this program after some time.
Yes, thank you.
I have not looked at the East African. I'm sure I'm going to get an occasion to look at it before we finish. But on the issue of the Constitution, whether it's parliamentary or presidential, you do recall that at the time that we were debating the new Constitution leading to the 2005 referendum, and then leading to the 2010 referendum that brought out the new Constitution, all these things were mooted and they were debated extensively in the country. And at the time that we came with the 2010 constitution, a good number of people thought the presidential system would work for this country.
Yes.
And that's why, I believe that's why it was voted for. Now, my view is that, like I keep saying, you see democracy is work in progress. It's not a finished product. And we are still looking for the best situation for our country, for this nation. And just before we came on air, I was asking Professor Anyang Nyong'o whether this constitution has a sunset clause, and we both agreed that it doesn't have. Mm-hmm. It doesn't say when it is going to be amended or looked at into again. My position is that it has been on now for 8 years, is going on for the 11th year, and I believe that it is time that we look at it again. Is it going to be a presidential system reperfected? Is it going to be a parliamentary system of government? I mean, like has been argued, like Professor Anyang Nyong'o has said.
Yes.
What system is it going to be? I think these are the things that we need to start looking at again. I don't know whether it will be parliamentary. I don't know whether it's going to continue to be presidential. One thing I know for certain is that time is ripe for this constitution to be looked at again. For us to, to use the 8 years that we've had as a learning curve to see whether it is time now to look at, to amend it, so that the things that we have seen in those 8 years can now be included, and so that we can be able to move forward as a nation. What system you are going to adopt, I cannot say for now. But I know for sure that it is time to look at it, and maybe it is also time now that we start thinking, I don't know whether it's going to come from the committee of 14 that was appointed pursuant to the handshake, whether it's going to be a committee of experts like we had in the Zamba Kitonga situation before 2010. Whatever is going to happen, I believe that this nation going forward needs to look at this constitution with a view to seeing what amendments, what changes will be necessary to give life to what Kenyans aspire to get. Is it going to be a referendum? People are saying there will be a referendum, there will not be a referendum. Kenyans are going to decide on this, and time is going to tell very, very shortly whether or not we are going to have a referendum. That is my position. That's how I view it, and I believe for me it's nothing to get excited about, because all we are looking at and looking for is what is best for our country going forward.
Thank you. Let's hear from Dr. Nyikal. Good morning.
Thank you, Debarl. Parliamentary system, presidential system. I've seen both. And I think the main thing that I see, the biggest difference in parliamentary presidential system is the position of ministers. In the parliamentary system, the ministers were in parliament. So there was kind of a link between the executive and the legislature. Many thought that probably that was not necessary. If you had a clean cut, then you would probably have a better separation and better results. What we have seen is that the oversighting of ministers, in my view, by Parliament has actually gone down. Ministers can come through committees, but you will never really find them on the floor of the House being put to task on what exactly is happening. Again, my observation is that ministers now in the presidential system tend to be actually more aligned to the executive, and not equally sensitive to the views of the parliament and the legislature, because they are totally dependent on their being in their position to the executive. While in a parliamentary system, the ministers actually had two responsibilities, one to the executive and one directly to the people who elected them. And in that system, I saw them being more responsive and would actually advise the executive better. Now, we've had over 5 years of this system, and I think what we are noticing is the need to look at. We have a new system. We stated how we should put it in place. We didn't probably do that exactly, but when we are noticing that there are issues. Obviously, it is time to look at it. Personally, I would probably go for a parliamentary system, what I've observed. But the handshake coming in fact, in my view, the biggest issue, the biggest benefit the handshake has brought is the calmness. And then there's a committee that has been put in place. And we have said this committee is going to look at all these myriads of issues. including that, and we've said we may have a referendum, we may not. My view is let the committee do its work, and let's not preempt what they'll do. If they come back and say there is a need to have a referendum and relook at the constitution seriously and have a referendum, we'll do it, because they'll present to us what they have found out, what they have looked at in detail. If they say, well, it is not necessary, let's proceed and make the following administrative or legislative amendments, then we'll go that way. But I don't think it is right.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Right, let's hear from Senator Poghisio. Good morning, good to see you.
Morning, Debarl, morning, colleagues. Debarl, you know, the very first article of the Constitution gives all the power to the people. All sovereign power belongs to the people of Kenya and shall be exercised only in accordance with this Constitution. The first level, of course, the highest level is God, as we acknowledge him, and then the second level is that the people have authority. And I think that the way I see people in Kenya, the people of Kenya doing it now, I was in Eldoret during the maize presentation, and you could tell, I don't know whether you saw that, you could tell the anger in the people. And the people of Kenya are about to demand that we relook at this Constitution because of some of the shortcomings, some of the shortfalls in the achievements of this Constitution. So I do not expect that it will be too long before people demand that we relook at this Constitution and even have a referendum on it, on some of the issues. So I do think that that notwithstanding, we should also be thinking about what happened to us after the election. And, you know, we had a big problem. The people were divided. And the people came together after the handshake. And I think you cannot just rubbish the handshake. And so as we look to this, the handshake then must produce something, must lead us to something. And so that's what I'm just saying, that I think this hullabaloo about I'm going to be this or that in the coming year, you don't know that for sure until you have completed the task of the referendum or the task of the workforce, I mean the team for the handshake, the Building Bridges team, and then we can know what to do next. So I think people should not start throwing spears at each other, as I've seen here. The Deputy President and you know, the former Prime Minister. So I think that we should all look forward to a situation where we are led by the team that brought the handshake. Now the handshake is quietened things, brought things together. We are now almost actually one people. And I think now, like Prof was saying about Tanzania, this is about the right time now for Kenya to gain direction, to find a common direction. And I think that let's try and accommodate each other and not to start throwing those spears, as I say, at each other.
All right, thank you. Still on that, maybe you're talking about the Constitution, and I know the Senate, last week you were in Uasin Gishu,
Yes.
right, the sitting. But now we're given to understand actually that you spent 30 million shillings for that particular, of course, sitting in the county right now. The question is about the sustainability of these sittings outside Nairobi. Or no, we know from the Constitution it's a given that yes, the Senate, they don't necessarily have to have a sitting inside or in Nairobi. But now going forward, in the spirit of austerity measures, do you think, and this is what has been captured by the staff, let me just pick up of that so that we can see where it's talking about senators 1 week Eldoret outing costing 30 million shillings. And that story is tucked away on page 6 of the Star this morning, right? Just below there, if it's actually below there, let me drop the tag so that we can see it there. Senators 1 week Eldoret outing cost 30 million shillings. That's what is on the front page of the Star this morning. But Senator, do you think this is sustainable? 30 million shillings? For a week, do we need these sittings? Of course, you will say we want to connect with the Mwananchi, but is this sustainable?
But I think it's the value you get for what you do. If you going by what we saw in Uasin Gishu, there was much more activity. We shortened the distance for example, governors traveling to Nairobi for audit queries. And we thought that...
that should be your wife calling you this morning, saying that you're looking good.
So we say, look at it. First of all, I don't know about the figure of 30 million because I mean, I'm sure books have not been reconciled yet. But since since the Star seems to be the one in charge of our resources,
but even if it's a ballpark figure,
let me come to
the rescue of
not really rescue. I really think that that figure 30 is kind of misleading because the same article says Uasin Gishu Assembly underwent renovations that cost an estimated 10 million among other costs. That is good for the Uasin Gishu Assembly to undergo renovations. And secondly, further, it illustrates that if all these assemblies had good facilities, maybe that renovation would not have been necessary and the cost have been less. Secondly, that the hotels in Eldoret were full is good for Eldoret's economy, so that governors don't come to Nairobi and everything is spent in Nairobi by our staff, our county staff coming to Nairobi to attend the Public Accounts Committee. Because usually when you call a governor to come for hearing here, he must come with his staff, technical and otherwise, and they will spend money in Nairobi. Nobody ever finds out how much money is spent by the counties in Nairobi attending Public Accounts Committee. So I really think that in terms of economics, one should not just look at it in terms of how much money was spent in Eldoret, but was this money spent cost effectively? Did it add to the economy of the counties in which these people, in which the senators went? And finally, which I think is very important, what was the intention of the Constitution? That Parliament can sit anywhere. Parliament was not going to sit without spending money. No. Parliament was going to sit with some money spent, because even when Parliament sits here, money is still spent. So I think the article would have been much more constructive by saying, okay, this money was spent. The next question, was it cost effective? That is much more important than just the sum. Mm-hmm. And cost effectiveness, I can just say, first and foremost, 10 million shillings were used to renovate the assembly. Was that cost effective? Is it useful? In the long run, is it going to be useful to the assembly? So I really think that we shouldn't just take these figures at their face value. And that's what populism does. You see a figure and you run around town, oh, this should not have been spent. I don't think that's the way we should reason in this regard.
Right, thank you. Maybe also to see what I was talking about on the front page of East African, this is in the spirit of East Africa integration as well. Will we have one constitution? Will we have, I don't know if it's talking about one president under one constitution, but it says the East African community has kicked off the process of forming a political federation by appointing a 12-member committee of experts to draft a regional constitution. This is in line with a directive by the region's heads of state to the Council of Ministers, asking it to begin drafting laws that will pave the way for the achievement of the last pillar of East African integration. And here also says one president under one constitution. When the political federation comes into force under one president, partner states' constitutions will become subordinate to the regional constitution. Currently, the treaty for the establishment of the EAC is subordinate to the partner states' constitution. What does this portend then for us? And what are we actually facing in light of the East African community, the integration? Any of you? Let's hear from...
Well, this, in my view, is something that I really wished for a long time would come into reality. So would have gone the way we were just before independence, that with independence we should have just been one big federation. You have to look at it in the history of Africa and how the boundaries were set up.
Yes.
These boundaries were absolutely arbitrary and cut people of the same group into various countries. If you look at East Africa, you look at the Maasai community across Tanzania, across Kenya, you look at the Luhya community across Uganda and Kenya, you look at the Luo community. It is all over.
Yes.
So really you find that these are people who should have been together. And even with that colonial history, before independence, East Africa was basically one nation. We had one currency, we had one university system, we had one rail and road system, we had one airway system, and with the East African Common Services, we literally Kenyans, Tanzanians, and Ugandans were moving across. If you look at the services that people need, all the three countries, including the other three that have come, the two that have come on board, have so much in common. If you look at health issues, it's the same. If you look at across the lake, it's the same. It really demands that we should be one. Now, what happened is now, we then went and split ourselves, and it has been very difficult now to integrate. I think we should actually move towards having a serious political federation, making easy for people to move, making it easy for goods to move, and having a bigger market so that...
Okay, so what does it portend for us if it says that it will be under one constitution? Does it mean that we do away with the constitution?
I don't think we will immediately move to one constitution. I think this is something that has to be gradual, but the foundation has to be laid. And when you are going to look at it, I think there must be some commonalities. We have the treaty now that picks from the various statutes and even the constitution to make it easy to operate. I think that is what we should strengthen. And in my view, we should go eventually towards one constitution. And even if you look at the issue of ethnicity, if you have a very big region where there are a large number of people, it's very difficult to have dominance of one or two groups because of the large numbers. And if you bring that into being, I think it is something that is desirable. What I say is that we are working on it, let's move towards a political federation, let's move gradually towards, in my view, one constitution.
Right. Let's hear from Kembi.
In my view, well, I think this is what we have been aspiring to become, a one people in the whole of the East African region. And that's why we have the East African community. And if you look at the economic partnership agreement that has been negotiated with the European Union, for instance, it is negotiated at the level of the East African community, all the five countries of East Africa, because the European Union and the East Africans recognize that we are one unit, we are trading virtually in the same kind of goods, and that it is better if we trade as one people. And the other important thing about being together is that there cannot be development without peace and security. And peace and security comes when you have common goals and common norms, things that you believe in. My view has actually been that we must continue to open these borders, all the way from Somalia to Congo DRC. Because if you do that, if you find that even the conflicts within the region will become less and less, like we have seen in both Rwanda and Burundi, because people are aspiring towards one goal, one of creating peace and security, and therefore creating wealth and prosperity. And when this happens, the way the world is at the moment is that we must continue to remove the opaque borders as much as possible. There is no reason why I should find it difficult to travel to Uganda, to Rwanda, to Burundi, to DRC Congo, and vice versa. Because once the borders are open, the way you do in Europe, if you enter one of the 28 European Union countries, once you've entered one, you can drive through all the 28 countries, across borders, nobody stops you, nobody wants to know where you are going, as long as you are legal. If you want to be stopped at the last border when you are leaving, to show that you actually had a right to enter. Now we're having a passport that is called the new Kenya passport. The e-passport is written East Africa. Then under there, Kenya. East Africa, Uganda. East Africa, Rwanda. That is what we are moving towards integration. I don't know whether or when you're going to get a new constitution. Whether in due course we are going to have one presidency, like we have the European president. That does not stop France from having its own president or Germany from having its own chancellor. But they have one big body called the European Union where they trade together, and now because there are 500 million people in the European Union, you find that they are able to create more wealth together, to be able to negotiate better together, and to be able to have a better outlook of the world. They talk about, when they talk with Americans, they are talking as 500 million people in the European Union. In the East Africa community itself, where we are now several hundred million people also, the moment we come together and stop our small little wrangles and recognize that we have one common goal, then you'll find that will be our biggest strength when you are negotiating with the rest of the world. But trade now, what they call the South-South trade, is going to be intra-East Africa, is going to be intra-Africa, is going to be intra all what we call the ACP countries, and you find that there'll be more peace. As long as we continue to create peace and security, much more wealth is going to be created, and we are going to be a much secure and wealthier region. So I think it's a very good thing going forward. When it's going to be achieved, I don't know when it is going to be. It's not a matter of today or tomorrow, but I'm sure that that is the goal towards which we need to achieve as East Africans.
Right. Let's hear from Samuel Poghisio.
You know, Debarl, this is a kind of homecoming. I mean, this East Africa community is not anything new. Look, I think the most people on this panel sat the exam under the East African Examination Council. And so we know a bit of what East Africa has been. It was, so going back to East Africa, community is different. Going to federation, however, is another ball game. But we should not worry about it, because what is being formed now is a committee of experts to look at it and give advice. I think we've been at the East Africa community level for so long, and we've been speaking about the federation also for so long. It's easier for East Africans to come together under federation than any other region that I know about, because we have almost one language. We have the Swahili, which is basically commonly spoken, that can bring us together. We have communities across. In fact, when you are listing the communities, the Pokot community is one of those communities that benefits from that opening up. The Turkana community, for example, you know, you have the people in the Sudan calling themselves the Toposa, who really speak the same language as Turkana. The Karamojong of Uganda speak the same language as the Turkana, which means there is a possibility of East Africa, big East Africa, really quickly integrating. So integration will be very easy. The politics of it might be a challenge, but integration of the people is not difficult at all.
Right. Professor Anyang Nyong'o.
Well, you know, I think Senator Poghisio hit the nail on the head, really. I went to the University of East Africa at the tail end of the university, before the two universities broke down to become national universities. But one good thing about those days is that you could go by train from Nairobi to Kampala without being stopped at the border to check anything. And then when you're in Kampala, you could go to the bank and withdraw your money and use it. There was an East African Currency Board. Things were much easier for people in East Africa. And then we had our people working with the post office in Kampala, in Dar es Salaam. You know, across the borders, there was East African Railways and Harbors. And of course, then we went backwards in the late 70s.
Was it the East African Post and Telecommunications?
In the Post and Telecommunications. Yeah, okay. That's why we had, originally before the East African Community, we had the East African Common Services Organization, then the East African Community. We were moving very fast towards the federation. And then politics broke things in the late 70s. And I'm glad we went back and recreated the community. But the point is, as my colleagues have said, it is now time that we went first to a confederation, as they say. The confederation is voluntary, and then to a federation very quickly. One of the things that we shall do is to have a common currency like the euro. In Europe, it makes trade, it makes business much easier. If you have a common currency, building the standard gauge railway from Mombasa through to the Congo would be very simple, because we would not be wondering how much this cost in Ugandans, in their shilling, in the pounds and dollars. It would be one currency, and it would be much easier discussion among the states.
Yes.
I've just come from Europe, by the way, and I was traveling within Netherlands itself from one city to the other. And you go to a station, you are just traveling within Netherlands, and you're told this train is going to Brussels. You know, it's interesting. You're boarding a train going to Brussels, but you're just stopping at the next station within one country called the Netherlands. Now, this would be very good for not just for business, but for culture, the cultural exchanges among our people. Now, we don't know much that happens in Tanzania because we have very little exchange with them. Traveling is difficult, you know, you have to have passport, you have to what not. Money have to be changed. So to bring our people together, to promote trade, to promote development, fast development, and to compete in the world, really, knowing that other countries, even in North America, there's NAFTA. You see? To compete in the world, it is imperative that we have this federation in East Africa. We have so much in common. We are just denying ourselves the capitalizing on this commonality that we have by not having a federation. And I think let us be brave enough and have it within the next 10 years. Maybe Kembi, by the time we have a federation, we may not be in politics, but I would have loved to be a minister. In the East Africa.
One commonality. You know, this thing of it, people actually got divided. You remember that
should we let's just take a short break, then don't lose your train of thought. Okay. We'll actually begin with you. Welcome back. You're watching This Is a Point here on AM Live. And we are looking at what has been happening, of course, last week, the politic of the week that has been. We continue the conversation also on what is on the front page of East African as far as the East African Confederation is concerned. A committee of experts is being formed as well. And of course, before we took a short break, we were with Dr. Nyikal on this as well, just to wind up on that. Yes?
Basically, what happened at independence when the three countries went apart is actually families were divided. If you look at, say, the Awori family, the brother is a minister in Uganda and the other brother is a vice president here. There are, if you go to the Kuria or the Luos in southern Nyanza, you find families that are actually living across the border. At the time of independence, the families were literally asked to make a choice whether they are going to be Tanzanians or Kenyans, whether to be Ugandans. So what we really need to do is bring these people together. It's more or less like the case of North and South Korea, where the same people are divided by an arbitrary line and they can't meet as freely as they want. So the federation, if it is made stronger, people will move freely, families will be reunited. That is really the way to look at it.
Right.